Mr. Chairman, thank you for convening today's hearing.
Can you move the mic just a little bit closer? There you go. Perfect. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for convening today's hearing. Mr. Lynch, thank you as well. A discussion about the Golan Heights today might seem baffling. Increasingly in recent years, many Israelis have expressed a huge sigh of relief that previous rounds of Israeli-Syrian negotiations did not result in an Israeli withdrawal from the Golan Heights. They basically didn't go anywhere. These Israelis imagined that had these earlier talks been concluded on Syrian terms, then in 2011, with the outbreak of the Syrian civil war, the forces of Jabhat al-Nusra, Daesh, that is ISIS, not to mention Assad's own ruthless army, would have been sitting along the coastline of the Sea of Galilee with their weapons aimed at the city of Tiberias across the lake. What has changed today is that with the imminent victory of the forces of Bashar al-Assad in the sector of South Syria, new diplomatic initiatives by outside actors cannot be ruled out. Already in March 2016, the UN's Special Envoy on Syria, Stefan de Mistura, proposed a paper called Essential Principles of a Political Solution in Syria. The first point of his 12-point paper specifically called for, quote, the restoration of the occupied Golan Heights, unquote, to Syria. This past February at the Valdai conference in Moscow, which I attended and I spoke at, Vitaly Naumkin, the leading Russian authority on Syria, insisted that Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights could not be accepted. He raised doubts about its very legality. What has changed today is that with the imminent victory of the forces of President Assad, these types of voices will increasingly be heard. Traditionally, the Golan Heights has been the front line for Israel's defense in the north. Israel faced acute asymmetry in active duty forces against Syria. This meant that in 1973, Israel had to withstand an attack by 1,400 Syrian tanks with only 177 tanks on its side. Israel planned on a strategic line of volcanic hills, known in Hebrew as Kavatilim, that helped it to withstand any Syrian assault until Israel's reserve mobilization was complete. What are Israel's potential sources of concern that make the Golan critical for Israel's security today? First, given the proclivity of Middle Eastern regimes to spend their resources on military acquisitions, the eventual recovery of the Syrian army must be anticipated despite its current weaknesses. In light of Russia's role in saving the Assad regime, massive Russian arms transfers to the Syrian armed forces will likely provide the basis for the renewal of Syrian military power. But there is a second source of concern for Israel: Iran's conversion of Syria into a satellite state that will host Iranian forces and bases. In addition, Tehran has been creating Shiite proxy militias modeled on the basis of Lebanese Hezbollah, using manpower from a number of countries, including Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, Pakistan, to take up positions in Syrian bases. The Iranians have deployed elements from the Fatamyun division, which is made up of Afghan Shiite refugees. As reported as recently as July 11th, Hezbollah and Iran-handled Shiite militias are integrated into the Syrian army in its campaign to take control of South Syria. Iran founded a Syrian branch of Hezbollah in 2014. A year earlier, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, General Qasem Soleimani, proposed unifying many of the various proxy forces and creating a 150,000-man army for operations in Syria. These units have operated under the command of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Many were active in the battle for Aleppo, and now in Dara, in southern Syria, right next to the Golan Heights. Iran's military goal is to create a land corridor from Iran itself across Iraq and Syria to the Mediterranean, which will help it unify its various fronts and establish its hegemony over the Middle East. It will aid Iran to advance the encirclement of Jordan and Saudi Arabia. It will also provide it with an assured line of supply to Syria and to Lebanon as its military presence grows. Locally, Iran seeks to link southern Lebanon and the Golan Heights. But there could be other objectives as well for Soleimani's army. Recently, Hossein Salami, the deputy commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, declared that the Islamic army in Syria, now operating in the Golan Heights, was awaiting orders to eradicate, let me repeat that, eradicate the evil regime of Israel. He used the Farsi word mahavi, meaning annihilation or to make extinct. He added that the Zionist regime has no strategic defensive depth, hence this goal was achievable. Even if this statement was motivated by the need for rhetorical flourish, it nonetheless demonstrates the general intent of Iran to use the Golan region for offensive operations against Israel. It would be folly for the state of Israel in any case to ignore statements of this sort by Tehran, especially when they are backed by concrete actions. I'm now reaching my conclusions. Israel today is under assault by a self-declared Iranian-led axis of resistance, which has been operating under Russian protection. As the Syrian state recovers from the Syrian civil war, its allies can be expected to make demands on its behalf, like the return of the Golan Heights to Syria. In fact, these demands have already been voiced. The strongest rebuttal to this effort would be the recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. This would demonstrate conclusively that those who use force to threaten their neighbors will not benefit in the court of international diplomacy. States today have a choice. They can back the demands of Iran and its supporters, or they can recognize the rights of Israel in the Golan Heights. U.S. recognition of Israeli sovereignty would set an important example for others. 3 United States administrations consistently, in written letters of assurance to Israel, confirmed that they envisaged, at the end of the day, Israel must remain on the Golan Heights. That core bipartisan principle of past U.S. policy cannot be realized in the long term without Israeli sovereignty over the Golan confirmed.
Thank you.